Fullbacks are fast becoming the most highly paid players in an NRL squad, and if you play that position, if you're a fullback, then by the end of this video, I want you to understand three things. Firstly, why does that happen in the NRL and how does that relate to the level of footy that you're playing right now? Secondly, and this is a big one, and that is what are the three key components that make up the role of a fullback on the rugby league field? And finally, what you can do right now to start dominating in that position and make it your own. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Joe Murphy. I co-founded League Fit Academy 9 years ago to help educate young rugby league players about how to build their body, their skills, and their mind. And we now work with thousands of players across 6 different continents right around the world. So, why have fullbacks become the highest paid players in an NRL squad? Historically, halfbacks and 5'8" were the highest paid players because they controlled the team's attack. And the fullback was someone who was safe under a high ball, had great support play, would back up through the middle of the field and could tackle. However, in the modern game, fullbacks have evolved into one of, if not the most valuable players on the field. And as a result, they often command some of the highest salaries in an NRL squad. Players like James Tedesco, Ponga, Trbojevic, Latrell Mitchell and Reece Walsh are amongst the most highest paid players in the competition. And there's three main reasons why. The first reason is that fullbacks are now elite playmakers. Modern fullbacks essentially function as a third half, frequently stepping in at first or second receiver to create attacking opportunities. Players like Ponga, Walsh, Papenhuyzen and Dylan Edwards add another dimension to the attack, making them almost as vital to attacking structures as the halfback is. Secondly, they control the team's defensive structure. With a clear view of the field from the back, fullbacks organise the defensive line, calling out threats and barking orders to players to fill gaps in the line. Strong defensive leaders like, say, Dylan Edwards or Clint Gutherson are invaluable to a team's defensive structure. And thirdly, fullbacks are often the best ball runners and the players most capable of producing game-changing moments. They're typically the players with the most X factor in their side. They're explosive players who set the tone for attacking sets with powerful kick returns, line breaks and evasive running. Star players like Tedesco, Papenhuyzen, Trbojevic and the Hammer not only gain crucial meters, but also deliver game-changing moments, from try-saving tackles to match-winning plays. Okay, I get it, Joe, fullbacks are awesome now, but how does this relate to me playing fullback for my local under-15s team? Well, if you want to max out your capacity as a fullback, you need to understand the role, the responsibility and the expectations of a fullback, how they've evolved and changed, and that educating yourself about what a fullback's role is, both in attack and defense, is the first step to maxing out your ability as a fullback and becoming the best footballer that you can be, regardless of whatever level that might be at right now. Okay, so what is the role of a fullback on the rugby league field? Well, it's one of the most dynamic, demanding and influential positions in rugby league. A top fullback is the last line of defence. They're a key playmaker and they're a relentless worker. It's someone who can save tries, create tries and really dictate the momentum of a match. And looking at it from an analytical point of view, we see that there's three components that make up the role of a fullback on the rugby league field. And understanding each of these components is key to maxing out your ability on the footy field. Now those three components are defensive responsibilities, offensive responsibilities, and leadership and mentality. So let's run through a detailed breakdown of each of those key components. Starting with the first, which is your defensive responsibilities. The fullback is always the last line of defense. As the deepest defender, the fullback, he's got to be an elite tackler, shutting down line breaks and stopping one-on-one tries. As well as this, they must have quick decision-making skills, knowing whether to use a low-cutting tackle, wrap up high, or push an attacker towards the sideline. And they're fearless in covering kicks, diving on loose balls and taking tough carries under pressure. The fullback must also organise the defensive line. The fullback has a complete view of the field and he needs to direct the defensive line, calling numbers, spotting overlaps. He needs to be able to communicate with his wingers, his centres, ensuring they hold or shift against different attacking structures. They need to excel at cover defence and reading support play. When a break occurs, the fullback's got to track inside and outside defenders and support players, making decision about when to let cover defence pick up the attacker or to commit to taking the ball carrier themselves. They need to anticipate offloads to shut down second phase play, and they need to be fit and agile enough to be able to cover ground quickly and make crucial defensive stops. So that's in a sense, that's their defensive responsibilities. Now, the second component is their offensive responsibilities, or what are they supposed to do in attack? Okay, so we'll start with kick reception and kick returns. Fullbacks must be positionally aware, reading the opposition's kicking game and adjusting accordingly. The goal is to be taking clearing kicks on the full, and so an understanding of wind, field conditions, and opposition kickers' tendencies will allow them to be in the right place at the right time to take as many kicks on the full as they can. And they also need to be really aware of their positioning close to their own goal line to avoid getting caught out of position for short attacking kicks. This positioning is crucial because a lot of the time fullbacks will be catching and returning kicks under pressure, often against an aggressive kick chase. And a second here or a second there can be the difference between beating the first defender and affecting a strong kick return that creates momentum for the set, or getting pinned into a corner and making life hard for your teammates for the rest of that set. The next area that comes under offensive responsibilities is ball playing and playmaking. So the modern fullback, like we mentioned earlier, he acts as a third playmaker, linking with the halves to create attacking opportunities. They often sweep out the back in backline plays, executing cutout passes, short balls, or dummy plays to break up defensive lines, and this requires fullbacks to have vision, knowing when to inject themselves into the attack and how to manipulate defenders, and obviously a certain level of mastery of their passing game. Next is line running and support play. Fullbacks must be elite support players, always following for offloads and looking for gaps in the defensive line. They should run great inside and outside support lines, anticipating when a teammate will make a half break and even knowing their teammate's preference for a right-handed offload or a left-handed offload. Timing is everything. Arriving at the right moment to finish a play can turn a good fullback into a great one. And a lot of this comes down to knowing your teammates, knowing who to support and when to support them. For example, if one of your props doesn't like to offload, and then one does, then you better make sure you're following the one who's likely to get you the ball and not wasting too much energy on the one who likes to tuck and run. Okay. Next, speed and agility. It goes without saying that the fullback is often the most athletically gifted player in a side, needing explosive acceleration to break away from defenders, as well as being highly agile and possessing great footwork to help in evading tackles, creating line breaks, making defenders miss in broken play, and tracking when you're trying to defend. And if that's not enough, they need to be durable and resilient because they tend to cover more meters than anyone else and they take more carries than most players during a game. Now, the third component is leadership and mentality. Now, when it comes to communicating and directing the team, the fullback is a key communicator, constantly talking to teammates about defensive positioning and attacking opportunities. You know, he'll be calling out to gassed middle forwards which side of the ruck they need to be on so they don't have to think about it, they just go there. Or he might be directing outside backs and the shape they're going to use with their next attacking shot. Essentially being another voice on the field, besides the half, that ensures that the troops are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Achieving all of this means that they need to be both mentally and physically tough because the fullback's frequently in heavy contact, particularly in kick returns and cover tackles. So he's taking hits, making decisions and making big plays on both sides of the ball, all while under fatigue. And in the midst of all of that, they're still required to stay composed and lead their team with both their voice and their actions. So we've talked about how fullbacks have become some of the most highly paid players in the NRL. We've gone into detail with the three key components that make up the role of a fullback on the rugby league field. And finally, we're going to look at what you can do right now to start dominating as a fullback and to make that position your own. It's as simple as following this performance pyramid. It shows a clear progression from the fundamental skills at the base to the more advanced and refined abilities and skills at the top. The key is to master the foundations first, then gradually build your way up, ensuring each level is solid before advancing to the next. So the most fundamental areas you really need to be working on first are your tackle technique, your ball handling and kick reception. So tackle technique, let's take that as an example. Working on improving your cutting tackle would be the starting point. And that might mean using a variation of different training drills to build up competence and confidence with that movement. You know, we're talking about things like the kneeling close repeater primer, which flows into the kneeling cutting T drill, and progressing that into a standing cutting T drill, which you can do with or without hip pads. And then once you've mastered that, moving on to the cutting rectangle drill, and finally ending up at the cutting repeater, which then becomes your basic bread and butter drill that you simply need to do on a regular basis to make sure that you keep those skills sharp. Now, this isn't done over the course of one session, of course. This is something that you work on progressively, only advancing once you're competent in the previous drill. And then, of course, you need to keep that skill sharp and maintain it by performing the cutting repeater on a regular basis. Now, when it comes to your ball handling and kick reception, ball handling first, some form of basic ball flow should be performed daily. You know, we're talking about 8 to 10 movements that challenge your grip, your carry, and help develop a greater level of proprioception, which is essentially the body's ability to sense its position, movement, and orientation in any given space without necessarily relying on vision. Now, the other part you need to work on at the base level of the performance pyramid as a fullback is your kick reception. So we have a few distinctions that we look at here when we're working with fullbacks and wingers when it comes to kick reception. But a brief summary is we look at high kick reception, which is basically taking the ball on the full, and low kick reception, which is after the ball has found the ground, be it off a clearing kick or even from an attacking grubber close to the goal line. Now, just to give you an idea without going into too much detail, with our high kick reception, we break it down into standing and running kick reception receptions because those two are different things. We then break them down further into safe or contested kick receptions because again, there's a different skill set there that needs to be trained. Those two things are not the same. We then make a further distinction between a low threat contested kick reception and a high threat contested kick reception. So it's important to understand that it's not just about having a varied skill set, it's about knowing when and how to use each skill effectively. Think of it like a golfer with a full set of clubs. A driver, a pitching wedge, and a putter each serve a specific purpose, but it's a skilled golfer who understands which tool to use and when. The same way, a good fullback needs to read the game, assess the situation, and execute the right skill at the right time. So your focus right now should be to understand the role of a fullback, study the performance pyramid, and evaluate where your skill set currently stands. From there, put in the work to train and improve the areas that need development. If you master this, you can become a game-changing fullback, one who can save tries, create tries, and someone who can dictate the momentum of a match. Trust me, because I'm Joe, and Joe knows.